Hey, Build Show Network. Steve Basic Architect. We're out here at the Build Show Build Boston site. Look who we got on site here. Advanced Green Insulation. Now, you might have seen him in some of our series videos. It's owned by a gentleman named Jesus. And Jesus is one of the go-to insulators here in the Boston metro area. They travel all around, upwards of, a couple hundred miles. They have like 50 or 60 trucks. But the thing I like most about Jesus is Jesus never rolls his eyes when I talk to him. And Jesus loves to be part of a new challenge and accept new things. So we're about to walk around the back of the truck and see something that really hasn't been seen in America before. Now, it's just getting rolled out. There's a couple places in America that have also gotten their truckloads, but we are one of the first houses where we're putting this stuff in. So let's take a peek around the back of the truck here. So what are we looking at here? Timber fill. It's by a company called Timber HP. They're right up here in Maine, just north of us. We're probably talking maybe 100 miles at most. They just took over an old paper mill, so they repurposed an old building for a new venture. They're making wood fiber insulation. We're using it in this because it's called timber fill. It comes in a blown-in type of insulation, and that's what we have here. They come in these bales. And you can see the makeup here of the fibers. We're going to see it a little bit more in depth when we jump inside, but you can do it in the attics, walls, ceilings, floors. You can put it anywhere that you would do a typical blown-in insulation, right? It's a one-for-one, if you will, with, say, a blown cellulose or blown fiberglass. But the difference is, while cellulose is, 0 on the carbon scale, Timber HP is a negative number on the carbon scale. So it's actually, better than all of the rest blown-in insulations from that perspective. As far as what am I getting when I use this insulation? Well, very much like cellulose, you're at 3.8 roughly per inch. So that's pretty typical of most blown-in insulations. They hover in that, say, 3.6 to maybe 4.1 range, depending on what type of insulation the manufacturer, how the manufacturer tested it, and blah, 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 and how it's used. But here, we're going to be putting it in our walls and in our ceilings. We have a lot of flat ceilings, as you know, so we're going to be pumping this up into there. We're going to be putting it in our walls. The other nice thing about this is that you're probably wondering, and I'm sweating like crazy because I'm standing in the sun here, but the perm rating on this, it's pretty much vapor open. I want to say it's somewhere in like a 40 perm range, but it's in the I don't care perm range. How's that? Where it's high enough where it doesn't really matter anymore. After you get above 10 or so, the difference between 20, 30, 40, or 100, it's pretty much vapor open. So it's made out of wood fibers. Again, within 100 miles of here, 0 number or negative number on that carbon scale. And as you can see, Jesus and Advanced Green, they got a whole couple truckloads of this stuff, and they brought it in. So let's continue our tour around the side of the truck. We'll talk a little bit. They have the machine down now. When you're putting in blown-in insulation, it's basically a reverse vacuum, right? Instead of sucking stuff out, it's blowing it in. So you can see the hose here. It's a 4-inch corrugated pipe that they'll use. It's basically connected to this giant hopper. The hopper does 2 functions. One, you drop the bale in, it grinds it up through a series of augers and breaks it down so that it can be easily pumped through the system, right? So instead of being this dense bale that's packed in that package, it becomes more of an air-entrained fibrous insulation that then gets pushed into the hose but gets pumped through. Now, you notice there's an electrical wire that comes out of this that accompanies the hose. But the electrical wire gives the operator at the end of the hose the ability to turn on and off the amount of insulation that's getting pumped into the wall. So why don't we take a quick walk inside there? We'll talk a little bit more about it, and I'll see you inside. So we're inside. We're about to go into the owner suite here. I got my good buddy William. William is with Advanced Green Insulation. And you can see here what William is doing is he's prepping the wall system with this fabric. And the fabric is basically, made to be a retention fabric. So air can move through it. Air is it's not an air barrier. Air actually has to move through it. Because when you understand how they blow it, they're going to cut a hole in here, they're going to stick the hose in, and they're going to fill it with insulation. Well, that insulation is going to displace some of the air in the cavity. So that air needs to be able to come out. It can come out through the hole, and it can come out through the fabric. That's why we always talk about it as more of insulation netting than it is like a real vapor, retarder, or however you want to talk about it. But basically, William's putting it up. The stuff simply just gets stapled up. You can see it pretty much gets stapled up like a zipper on there, because the last thing that you want when you stick the hose in there is you don't want to be filling up the cavity and have this stuff popping off of the wall, or even worse, popping off the ceiling there. So obviously the stilts help in the larger room. This is one of the interior walls. One of the other beautiful things about Timber HP is it has really good acoustic properties, right? So if you want to up that STC rating, sound transmission coefficient, of a wall assembly, you fill it with this product and you get a really good acoustically serving wall system. And in this case, being the owner suite, separating that from the rest of the house is certainly going to help that effect. So anyways, let's go and see if we can't catch the guys actually installing some of this stuff at the end of the hose. I jumped over in the pantry. You guys are off doing something, so I figured I would take over the control. I'm not going to certainly turn it on because, as you can see, we have the wood fiber. It's filling up the hose. It basically comes down the hose, and this is a really good shot if you want to get to see what this is. I mean, it literally is ground up wood fiber strands that is just packed in a wall nice and densely. So you saw the hopper out there. This hose obviously connected to the hopper. The controller that I talked about, right? So you don't have a guy in here yelling, hey, okay, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on. He can control whether the pump is actually blowing, or the blower is actually blowing insulation or not, right? So we have the controller there, handles the on-off, and you can see here, they basically take the stud wall here and divide it in half. So they'll just cut a little hole in there, and then they basically stick this all the way down to the bottom, and they simply pull it out until they get to near the hole, and then they'll take it reverse direction and shove it up on the top, and then basically slowly retract it down, and then basically pull it out. And you can see here we have a nice tufted stud bay with Timber HP. Now, one of the interesting things about blown-in insulation, and I think you can capture it here, but understand, look at, this has got a little bit of a camber to it. And the reason we put that camber on there is so when we put the drywall on and this actually pushes, it increases the density of that insulation and makes it work even a little bit better, right? So you really want to fill that up so that when they compress that, and you don't want to fill it too much where it can't be compressed. So this isn't a do-it-yourself job. This is getting somebody with a trained eye that's been doing, thousands of these stud bays, filling them up and going for it. So anyways, let's jump back to the studio. We got some good stuff to talk about there. We'll continue the conversation about Timber HP and wood fiber insulation in the studio. I'll see you back there.
All right. So hopefully you enjoyed that little tour out at the Build Show Build Boston site. Yeah, wood fiber insulation. It's the, I guess you could say, the new kid on the block. And yeah, we're one of the first to use it in the country in the in a kind of whole house situation. So anyways, hopefully you enjoyed that. Got Big Red in hand. I broke out a wall detail here. So I figured we'd just talk it through and see where we're placing it in the detail and why and all that good stuff. But let's get after it. All right. So as you can see there, I grabbed the water table detail. So give you a little orientation. You can see this is the foundation wall there, and obviously the band joist here, and floor joist is running right through in here to there, and then above that is our radiant floor. You can see the tubing there, and then bottom plate to the upper wall, and that upper wall goes from there to there. It's basically 2x6 wall. And then down in the basement, also understand we have our top plate there, and we have a 2x4 stud wall down there. So let's start up on top here. You can see 2x6. 2x6 wall there. So that gives us 5.5 inches. We did a 2-inch splash of closed cell spray foam there. So that leaves us a remaining 3.5 inches. So this stuff, the 3.5-inch Timber HP wood fiber cavity insulation, that's our 3.8 per inch. So we're talking, it's at R15, something like that. Yeah, roughly around R15, I believe they call it. So let's see, that's R15 there. We have 2 inches here. This is R14. And then, of course, we have our 2-inch R wall zip sheathing at 9.6. We'll just call it R9. Right? So 14, 29, 38. So R38 is our wall assembly. Now, notice, I don't put poly or anything on my walls. I want this to have the ability to dry to the inside, right? So having that wall dry to the inside, because obviously the closed cell spray foam and the polyiso, they are kind of the line upon which things dry to the inside and things dry to the outside here. And we have that vent space here, which helps us lower our classification for a vapor retarder system. But a couple things to understand. This is why I'm really not worried. One, to have a problem, I have to have a problem that starts to exist, meaning moisture. So is there moisture in the area? Yes, there is, obviously. But because of the airtightness of the assembly, and we are going to be less than 1.0 ACH50 on this house. I mean, we've already tested it out, and we're right around 1, and I think that's just going to improve. We were missing a few things when we did that, so that is only going to improve. So there's no real air moving across assembly. Why am I concerned about air? Well, Vapor diffusion is going to put some moist air up against that surface, but not really a lot. Air, if I cut a hole there and I cut a hole here and we moved air across here, that air train would take a lot more moisture than vapor diffusion. But even less concerning is the fact that we have the ZIP R9 and we have the 14. So basically we have a demising line there where we have 23 on the outside and 15 on the inside, right? So somewhere in here we have outside, or inside and outside. So let's say that's inside, this is outside, and this is the center of the wall, and this whole thing is our wall assembly. You know, the science is such that, you know, this wants to be somewhere around a half. I think with this air leakage, I'm comfortable with that number, you know, maybe being 30 or 40% of what the total wall is. But you can see here, if we're at R38 on this wall, R23 of it is outboard, R15 is inboard. This surface here is never going to see dew point. I say never, but I mean, if it did, it would be a very short stint, but it is not going to be reached there, which means any of the vapor that migrates in here through vapor diffusion is going to stay in the vapor form, because it's not going to get cold enough to find the dew point and condense inside that wall system. So that's why we're really comfortable. Honestly, even if we didn't do the 2-inch splash and we just had R21 here, we'll put that down here, right, instead of the R15. That R21 is, this would be, yeah, that would be R9. So we would have roughly R30 with that 10%. In our climate, I think I would be okay with that also. That I mean, we get some cold days in the winter, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. So I think I would be comfortable with that. But anyways, that Timber HP, we're filling it up. That 3.5-inch cavity, it's that final bit of insulation in our wall assembly. If we go down to the basement here, it's very similar to what we're doing there. We just don't have the exterior insulation. The foundation has the ability to dry to the outside and fully exposed. Our insulation continuity path is up the inside. And here you see we do 2 inches closed cell foam. We got that roughly I call it 12.4, but the Excellus guy corrected me, and we didn't use the foam lock, we used the Excellus. So that is, he said it is an R14. So we have that, and then of course this here is another R15 in there. So basically our wall assembly here is R29. And again, just like above, this demising line here of where that 2.5 inches of closed cell is in front of the concrete wall ensures that any moisture migration via diffusion here is going to hit a warm spot, and it's going to stay vapor and not really hit that dew point and become condensation in the wall there. So that'll stay nice and dry, hence the ability then to put the Timber HP product in the wall here. I mean, it is wood fiber, right? So we don't want to put that in environments where it's going to get wet or stuff is going to start growing on the inside there of our wall system. So anyways, there you have it. That is our Timber HP installation of wood fiber out at our Build Show Build Boston site.